home for the best coverage of the Jazz, Utes, and Cougars is right here on The Zone. This is JJ and Alex on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Welcome back, everybody. JJ and Alex on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. About 25 minutes away from a Jazz pregame starting up against this Memphis Grizzlies team in Memphis as the Jazz fire back up. First game back from the break. We'll see how this one shakes out for them. That's a 4 o'clock pregame, 5 o'clock tip right here on the KSL Sports Zone. In the meantime, want to remind you, you can always go into KSLSports.com/contests and nominate for yourself a person who does an awesome job with the youth sports in your neck of the woods. And you want to honor that team mom, what about that team assistant? What about that offensive coordinator that's never been paid a dime for dedicating his afternoons to your Pee Wee football team? Look, whoever it might be, just dial it up on KSLSports.com/contest and we'll get you that nomination. We read those winners off every week, and then they get $250 courtesy of Beehive Meals, as it is the KSL Sports and Beehive Meals Hero of the Week. Joining us on the program right now, he's the BYU insider for KSLSports.com. He's Mitch Harper. Mitch, how's it going, man?
Hey, good, Alex. Happy to be on, man.
Sorry about double dipping here. I know it was a long day, but we're just going to talk about.
You must be exhausted. Listen, all that barbecue you just had to eat.
I know. Did you guys have a heyday at that place? You've done that with me there. I've taken you to one of those remotes.
I've got brisket and ribs in front of me, and we are all the sides. Kenny took care of us, so we are enjoying some good fixings right now.
I love it. Well, and we're not going to go football. We'll just do the basketball thing right now. And so you don't have to rank anything right now, but where BYU is right now is a dark spot. They're 1-6 against top 25 teams this year. They're also their first game back against Arizona. A lot of fight and a lot more defense, I think, that we've seen in a couple other games. But not enough, obviously, to get past one of the best teams in the country. Iowa State tomorrow in Provo. How does BYU get back into the swing of things here? Because they need to find a groove with a totally different lineup.
Well, I think tomorrow they need at least 60, 65 points from A.J. DeBonsa and Rob Wright. I feel confident that they're going to get at least 30 from A.J. I think, Rob Wright's got to step up his production because against Arizona, I thought a little bit of a dip compared to what he was doing the previous week. And they just need him to get at least 25 to 30 points. I mean, that's what it is right now for BYU. I thought there were some, improved play from Kennard Davis and Keba Keita, which is promising. But, you hate to be in this spot for BYU to try to reinvent yourself, late February. You'd rather this be November or late November rather than late February. So it's a difficult spot for BYU to be in. I think that there were some signs, though, that this team can spring an upset or two down the stretch here. And tomorrow is the last real signature win opportunity for BYU if they want to start to maybe climb the seed line because, BYU is staring down a situation where, they could drop a seed because of the absence of Richie Saunders. If the committee sees BYU struggling against Iowa State tomorrow, they could use this and say, you know what, this is not as high level of a team as they once were in the beginning of the season. Look at the Arizona game, look at the Iowa State game as case in point. So BYU's got to show well. And I thought they showed pretty well against the Arizona, but, tomorrow's a big opportunity and they need some big performances from obviously the big two, but maybe some unexpected performances from someone we're not talking about to really step up to be that third wheel tomorrow, at least on the offensive end.
Even before the Richie injury, depth was a problem for this team. And, the injuries have been used as an excuse. But honestly, there's enough guys on this team and enough guys they brought in. It feels like somebody should be able to step up. How fair is the criticism about their roster construction? Did they put too much at the very top? You look at a team like Arizona, and you're looking at an Iowa State team that has depth. Do they need to correct the way they build their roster at BYU in this new NIL era?
I don't think so, JJ. I think that BYU got talented guys. I think they just maybe misevaluated or used guys incorrectly. Kennard Davis was, a dominant player for Southern Illinois last year. He was a number one guy, and he got then asked to be just, a spot-up shooter, a 3-and-D guys, maybe a fourth wheel. It's just like a different mindset, and I think that's been a real big adjustment from going from being the guy to now just a guy. And so that's been adjustment. I think that if he can kind of, have some sets designed for him, I think that could get his confidence going a little bit more. Even someone like a Dominique Diomande, very talented, but just hasn't even had really any minutes or any run to the point where he doesn't play even with, a pressing need for some defense. He hasn't played. So maybe it's been a case of misevaluation. Maybe it's been a situation where he's just not ready for this level of play in the Big 12, only his second year in college basketball. So maybe a combination of misevaluations on some guys. And I think Kevin Young's still kind of trying to figure out how to build rosters for a college basketball team. But I thought it was a good recipe, what they built this year. I think one of the big issues, though, that they did have in roster construction was maybe not enough, ball handlers to, along with Rob Wright. Yes, they have AJ DeBonsa to be the de facto point guard to give Rob Wright any sort of breather, or even when he's on the court, AJ can serve as the point guard. But there was no real backup option other than Nate Pickens. When he went down, he was gone. And last year, that was a nice luxury where they had Yegor Dioman and then Dallin Hall to come off the bench. They don't have any sort of luxury there where there's it's just a second guy that if someone's got an off night, you can turn to this other point guard for BYU. So I think emphasizing the importance of ball handling will be important. And Baker's absence, too, was another big one because he could have been another ball handler for this group. So they've had a lot of key injuries, and it's definitely not an excuse. But I still think the talent and the personnel has been there. It's just these guys almost to the point now where it's like they just kind of leaned on the big three, and now you're late in February needing to, again, change things up and get more from these other guys, and they're just not used to it, and they don't know if they have the confidence night in, night out that they can deliver every single game. But they got to hope that it happens because there are talented guys. I think Kennard Davis, I think that Hadim Boop, talent, but just haven't consistently got it enough from these role players to make you feel good every single night going forward.
Mitch, we were talking the roster construction stuff. I think we talked about it quite a bit this week because it's easy to look now and go, well, you're just top heavy. Look how good these guys are, and you haven't gotten enough help. The bench scoring we talked about yesterday, they're 351st, I think, in the entire nation. At this point last year, they were 15th. So obviously there's that, and maybe some of the misevaluation things you're talking about. But so then, does the idea change even more? Like I know people talk about how much money is at the top here, but at the same time, like everybody knows you have to have depth. Kevin Young's not, he's not. Right. That's not something he doesn't know either. And so, how do you do it knowing that people are the intensity and the pressure on that guy is just insane right now?
Yeah, well, I think Kevin Young's the right man for BYU. I think he's done a fantastic job, and there's no doubt he's going to build really good rosters going forward. I mean, BYU is going to be in the mix for talented guys every single year that he's, part of the program. I mean, and I just think, again, going back to the maybe misevaluations, you look going into the year at a guy like Tyler Moroz coming in from Idaho as a sharpshooter to maybe fill that Trevin Nell role. He hasn't even really sniffed the court. And, and he's a liability on the defensive end. That was just a misread where you kind of went into the season thinking he's going to get you, 2 3-pointers a night maybe. And that just hasn't even been a thing to where they don't have that. And when you've got AJ DeBonsa, who is a willing passer, and early in the season, he was willing to do the whole spread it out. I remember that opener against Villanova. It was almost like, AJ, take this thing over. They need you to take over. He was willing to facilitate, but they just don't have guys that are knocking down shots consistently for this team. And, it's always interesting to me when you look back at like the exhibition games, and they had some poor shooting performances against even a high caliber team like North Carolina and Nebraska. And you thought, well, it's just maybe some off night shootings, but that's kind of what it's been for BYU. They've had some games where they've knocked it down at a high clip and, hit, 12, 13 threes in a game, but it's just not consistent enough. And when you have a passer like AJ DeBonsa and Rob Wright, you need to surround those guys with excellent shooting. They don't have that consistently. So then you turn to just AJ and Rob Wright. And when Richie was on the floor, you turn to those guys and they're going to carry the day every single possession, and their usage rates are going to be off the charts. So now it's like you look at the roster and think it was just leaning into those guys when really the pieces look to be there. It just hasn't materialized on the floor because just guys haven't lived up to what they were expected to do. And that's where they had to just lean heavily on a guy that will deliver. And that's AJ DeBonsa, who's lived up to, I think, every dollar that he's been thrown his way. I mean, every single night he brings it. He's available. And I think that he's looked like the number one pick throughout this season for BYU.
With all that and the frustration and everything going on, BYU can make a big statement on Saturday with the number 6 team in the country at the Marriott Center. Iowa State is an incredible team, but they also don't have that. I mean, the best player on the floor is going to be AJ DeBonsa, right? So what does BYU have to do to take advantage of this opportunity to get a win against a national championship contender like Iowa State?
I think BYU defensively got to have one of their best games and maybe – to steal a KY term, kind of get them stuck in mud. They like to spread it out, kind of like BYU did last year. They rely heavily on ball movement. I mean, there'll be games in Big 12 play where Iowa State's had, 27 assists in a game. They spread that thing around. If you can get them into, maybe a little bit of ISO ball, which BYU's really good at, that's not Iowa State. They don't have that. They spread that thing around. And so if you can get them forcing some ill-advised shots, that's where BYU could have some success. And Kevin Young last year did a brilliant job, against TJ Otzelberger's teams, winning in Ames and in Kansas City. But this is a much tougher challenge. I think this is the best Iowa State team that BYU is going to face since BYU joined the Big 12. They're really balanced. And, Joshua Jefferson, he might be the Big 12 player of the year, just how balanced he is in all the statistical categories. Points, rebounds, assists, steals. He does it all. And, Taman Lipson and Milan Momcilovic, best shooter in the country. I mean, he's knocking it down at about 50% from beyond the arc. You can't let him go off from three. The common thread in all of their 3 losses this year, they've had less than 10 made three-pointers. I think you got to keep them around, 7 to 9 three-pointers made at the high end. If you could keep that lower, BYU will have a shot. I think BYU will be in this game. I always like BYU's chances in the Marriott Center. That's always a spot where BYU kind of thrives, but they have not been good as an underdog. They're winless this year as an underdog in games, and they'll go into this one as an underdog. But I think BYU could spring the upset here. They match up personnel-wise pretty well with Iowa State because I think Iowa State just doesn't have anyone to the level of AJ and, Rob Wright. I mean, Taman Lipsey's really good at getting in passing lanes and generating turnovers. But I think Rob Wright, if he can kind of be a little bit slippery, get into that paint and finish around the rim, this could be a game where BYU's right there at the under 4 and has a chance to win it. They need it because, again, this could give them a chance to maybe jump into that 5 seed territory because right now it's anywhere between 6 and 7 on the seeds and the brackets. And that's just not a recipe to get to the second week, and you got to start climbing up those seeds possibly. Yeah.
Mitch Harper, BYU Insider for KSLSports.com. Anything that comes down the pipe that's BYU related, Mitch Harper can be relied on for the best version of it. And I'm telling you, it's going to be a big one on Saturday at the Marriott Center, and a couple more games left at the Marriott Center this year. 3 out of the next 5 are going to be at home, so they have a little bit of that home advantage. Mitch Harper, appreciate it, man. Safe travels from the barbecue place. You might fall asleep on the way home from the meat.
Don't drive home drowsy.
Thanks, JJ and Alex.
You might pull over with the meat sweats.
There you go. Mitch Harper.